start, of course, with the news in general. Dennis Allen, he's the guy. It felt that way, kind of inevitable for the majority of this search. Mario, even though they spent 8 hours with Eric Bieniemy, they interviewed a number of different candidates. From the moment Sean Payton stepped down, Dennis Allen just seemed like the guy that was going to step up. And it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. The Saints aren't going into a rebuild, right? They have what they want in place, maybe minus a quarterback. But for the most part, they want it to just kind of be a seamless transition. You come in and do what you're going to do. It makes a lot of sense because think about how integral Dennis Allen was to this current run that the Saints were on. How many times have you and I both sat here when talking about if the Saints could have made the playoffs or the Saints making a run deep, hopefully to the Super Bowl? How they've won the past few years hasn't been offensively. It's been with a defense, a strong defense, and a running game. This potentially allows you to do that while hopefully developing the next quarterback. That's something we'll get into when it comes to Dennis Allen. But continuity is the main theme here, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it does. This was always the logical choice, Musso, and in my opinion, this is an excellent hire. Like you said, not just this season, but going back the last 5 years since Dennis Allen has been defensive coordinator. He helped Sean Payton fix his defense, and he completely turned that group around once he took over for Rob Ryan in 2016. And I don't think it's as hard to get excited about this as some people are making it seem. He has years of experience working alongside Sean Payton. He was on staff when the Saints won the Super Bowl as a secondary coach. And then, like I said, look no further than the work that he's done the last 5 years with hopefully a lot of those key pieces coming back. You got a lot down Marcus Williams, who will be a free agent, but the pillars of the defense will still be there, whether you talk about Marshawn Lattimore, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, and they'll have a familiar leader. And like we said yesterday, I think he's much, much, much better equipped to be a head coach now than he was in Oakland 10 years ago. Now it's up to Dennis Allen to go out and prove it.
It's a much different situation in New Orleans as well than it was in Oakland. They were going through an ownership change at that point too. And look, Oakland hasn't been a stable franchise in decades, if we're being honest. It seems weird to say, but the Saints are a very stable franchise. This adds to it. You're going to hear retread, right? We kind of talked about that yesterday. A lot of hires are retread hires. And I don't even really like that word because it just carries such a negative connotation when that's not necessarily the case. The Jaguars hired Doug Peterson. He's a quote-unquote retread. He's also a Super Bowl champion, right? I mean, that's a franchise that hasn't necessarily been at the top. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that, right? I mean, you roll your eyes when I say that because it's such an obvious statement, but they went out and got an established head coach. A lot of teams did. You look at people who actually hired. I feel like there was more retreads than there were first-timers this to go round, and I'm okay with that, especially because he's been so integral in this and knows the culture of the Saints. It allows you to keep your staff hopefully in place. I know obviously Chris Richard was interviewing for positions, but if he holds back, you have your entire staff in place and you can just promote one of them, either Richard or Ryan Nielsen, up to defensive coordinator. Pete Carmichael, I know you've mentioned this a number of times, has called plays in the past for the Saints in Sean Payton's absence. So, I mean, and they were still a top offense when that happened. It feels like the easiest way to go forward for New Orleans. Now, unfortunately for Dennis, you got the great opportunity, but you are going to be the guy following the guy.
And there's a lot of work for him to do, both coaching-wise and personnel-wise. But the number one reason he's not a retread, going back to your prior point, is that he wasn't fired. He's the only defensive coordinator under Sean Payton that wasn't fired. He's the only one that kind of matched the standard of the offense, especially in those prime years, 17, 18, 19, when you had a complementary offense and defense. What a shame they weren't able to win a title. But you've seen the success right there on the defensive side of the ball, and you can't say the same about any defensive coordinator under Sean Payton. So that fact alone, I think, makes him more qualified and makes him not a retread.
You saw a lot of development, too, on that side of the ball under Dennis Allen, which is something you can continue to see now as well. And that's something that made this Saints defense what it is. When you had to lose pieces like Trey Hendrickson, well, you saw other guys step up that were developed over time. Trey Hendrickson is the perfect example of the development that took place under Dennis Allen. But even somebody like Marcus Williams, who got off to a little bit of a rough start his rookie year, but is now looked upon as one of the top safeties in the NFL. You'll continue to see that. Quarterback, obviously, here before we hit break, that's going to be the big one. maybe you don't attract the big free agent name, but I mean, it seems like now you put your eggs back into the Jameis Winston basket.
You would think there's definitely some options they could explore there. Maybe this scenario where they bring back Jameis, maybe still draft a young guy. Like the whole philosophy of what you're looking for in a quarterback, I think now changes with Sean Payton gone. And I think that there might be some changes to the offensive staff. Jeff Duncan and others are reporting that you can see some attrition there where they maybe keep P. Carmichael, but then bring somebody else in. There's still a whole lot of work to be done here. But at the end of the day, the strength of the team, the identity of the team the last few years has been the defense. And the leader of that defense is now staying put.
He is. And to your point about potentially changing some things up on the offensive staff, as great it is to have Dennis Allen come in and continue the culture, continuing the winning or hopefully continue the winning that the Saints want, he should be able to have free reign to build his staff. Like it should not just be one of those things, okay, we're putting you in the head coaching spot, but you have to run this the exact same way. He should run it similar, but be able to bring in his own people, especially offensively, that he believes can lead this forward. But somebody like Pete Carmichael, I would expect just surface level that he would be retained.
Yeah, and when it comes to potential OCs, it's kind of slim picking right now. Like most of them are taken. Maybe you bring back like a Joe Lombardi who has some rapport with his staff. Right now he's currently with the Chargers. You could try to poach somebody, but other than that, it's hard to think of other names. So that report from Duncan, interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what changes Dennis Allen wants to make because at the end of the day, he needs to be Dennis Allen, not Sean Payton.